Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 31 of the Musicians Talk Show. My name is Dallas DeWhite, one of your co-hosts for the day.
And hey, everybody, it's Matt. What's up?
What's up? Good one. Today's podcast is brought to you, as always, by Bandzoogle. Bandzoogle makes it easy to build a stunning website for your music in minutes. Guys, when they say minutes, they are not lying. It is so easy. You can do it with their nice visual editor. You don't need to know coding or any of that stuff. Tons of great features designed for musicians, such as tools to sell your music and merch, commission free. They don't take any money from you there. Mailing list tools to grow your fan lists and newsletters, whatever you want to do with your mailing list. Integrations to pull in your content from all your online services like SoundCloud and such. And really, really good live support. They get back to you really fast, and they are always happy to help with your problems. And the whole team is either musicians, married to musicians in the industry some way, so they know how to help you with what you need. Bandzoogle plans start at just $8.29 a month and include your own free custom domain name, which is nice because everything's in one place for you. You don't have to manage your domain name somewhere else and do your content over here, and it's all in one place. So go to bandzoogle.com to try it for free for 30 days. Be sure to use our promo code, which is TMTS. That's the Musicians Talk Show, TMTS, to get 15% off your first year of subscription. Bandzoogle, websites built for musicians by musicians. Matt, who do we have today?
Kevin Vecchione.
Absolutely. Kevin is amazing. Phenomenal bass player. Known for his work with Greg Howe and Marigold and all sorts of cool stuff. I first learned of Kevin through Marigold because I was listening to one of their songs, and it's grooving. It's a great song. And there's this one bass lick that's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So, of course, I dug into that. That's Kevin. We talk about all kinds of stuff, but we focused on kind of some spiritual stuff in this episode, which I thought was a nice change of pace. We really kind of get into psychology and mindset and some really interesting things that,
which is important.
Yeah, I think everyone can get some value from this episode. So let's dive in.
Yeah,
he was the original drummer of Marigold.
Right. Love it. We were just blasting the first album there, which is actually a good jumping off point. Why don't you talk us through the recording process and the whole process for that first album? Because it's awesome. It's one of my favorites.
Oh, thank you, brother. It took a really, really long time. We went through a lot of stuff. We started in Rochester, New York. We took a trip up there and stayed for a while. I forget how long we stayed. I think Gianluca flied in from Italy. He wasn't even living in the States yet, so he came over from Italy. We had Elvio Fernandez as the singer at that time, and he is the kind of Swiss Army knife utility guy for Daughtry right now.
Oh, okay, cool. They're just about to go out, I think, now.
Right. And Elvio's from Rochester, and he had all the cool hookups on studios, and he's like, if you can't go anywhere in Rochester without somebody saying, Elvio, what's up, man? We were getting seated ahead at the Italian restaurant because Elvio was in our party. In Rochester. So it was really cool to be in Rochester with him. And we wrote, I don't know, maybe 6 songs that didn't even make the record. Actually, I think 2 of them got reworked into stuff that you guys hear now. Like, we used grooves from a bunch of them. But it was like, I can't really remember because I don't remember what I ate yesterday. But I know that a lot of it sounded like it was really moody and reverby and Stratocaster-y, and it was really bizarre. I mean, I loved it. It was like Pink Floyd meets John Mayer. Some of that stuff. It was really cool, and then so we used some of it. But how Megan got into the picture was it was just like perfect timing. Daughtry was looking at Elvio. We had, come back to, Greg was living in Vegas. I was living in Philadelphia. Gianluca went back to what he was doing. And then Daughtry took Elvio. So we had those 6 tunes there. And we were like, man, we want to really do something. And I said, hey, are you against having a female singer? And he was like, absolutely not. And I sent him, I forget what it was, maybe some live YouTube videos or whatever of Megan doing her thing. And he was like, that was it, as they say.
Yeah. Rightfully so.
Special. She was living on the East Coast with me, and we had met through, when you're living in the same town and people show up on your radar, you get to find out real quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
So then from there it went into full recording mode, I guess.
What did we do? I remember I made a 2-song demo for Greg. That's what we did. Megan came over my studio in Philly, and by studio I mean closet in Philadelphia, and we recorded in my closet. And I lived in a place that had like 30 people living in it, that each had their own separate room, like you would see in Brooklyn. So we, those little those things that are supposed to sit behind a microphone and stop the sound from going behind the mic. I forget what they're called. And they have that foam stuff on it. Mm-hmm. So I made a box basically to put her head in and sealed her in a box. It was hilarious. I wished I had taken pictures of it.
She had air holes, right?
She had air holes.
No air, just
it was just
singing.
I can't believe. I haven't talked about this since that day. I mean, I'll bet you Megan's even forgot about it. It was hilarious, and it didn't make the mic sound good. But we needed privacy because she probably has the loudest voice I've ever stood next to, and that includes men. I've just never experienced that kind of volume.
Powerhouse.
And yeah, she's crazy. I described her to Greg. He's like, well, what's she like? I was like, Steven Tyler with a vagina and more power. And
jeez.
And he was like, okay, let's check it out. So we made a 2-song demo, and actually one of those songs made it to the record. And I forget the name of the song. It was because we changed it. It was just the groove and the basic thing made it to the record as one of the songs we kind of rush in at the end to fill it in. And it was such a hodgepodge. I mean, you can hear it in the mix. Some of the mixes are so amazing, and so they came together so well. Like Evergreen was just one of those really magical mixes that came together really well. And then other ones we were really, because we were learning, we did it all ourselves. And to really answer your question, when we started going all out, I flew to Greg's house in Vegas, and we were doing all the stuff. We did a lot of the initial stuff in his bedroom studio, which at the time was a miracle. I mean, I don't know if he's told you about this. I know you talked to him, but his setup at the time, I had a computer that I would have sworn would have been able to handle more stuff. It was like twice the processing speed, twice the RAM, twice the, we had like, I had solid state drives, right? All the right things you need for audio. And he had this computer from like MySpace years that was murdering everything, all the plugins, all the tracks, all the virtual instruments, like nothing skipping at all. So we did it was crazy. It's just indescribable. I hope you guys talked about that. I hope you talked, because he's since upgraded. He's got. Oh yeah,
we talked about the new setup. I didn't hear about the old one, so that's funny.
Yeah, well, his new setup is awesome, but that's where we were really kind of limping back then. It was really, Greg loves, the duct tape and the crazy glue. If you're like, he's all about, I recorded the 5 album at his house in 97 or something like that back then. And that setup was, I mean, you can imagine. I remember I showed up at his house when we were recording that album. He lived in Easton, PA at the time. And I brought a computer that we built it from scratch back in Philly. It had no chassis, and it had a software program that some guy I knew developed, and it was able to record 4 tracks at once. And I was like, Greg, we can record onto a computer. He's like, get the fuck out of here. And we it was like 96, 97. We wired it up, and I gave him a little demo of how we could do 4 tracks. Of course, no plugins. I think there might have been reverb, but you can imagine on a Pentium 286 processor, what you were able to get out of that. But we ended up doing that album on ADATs. But anyway, that was not what you asked me. You were talking about Marigold. So fast forward, we're in the junkyard recording, trying to get the best we can. The computer's miraculously holding up to everything we're throwing at it. And on that 30-day excursion, we banged out a majority of what would become the basic tracks for the record. And then when I went back to Philly after those 30 days, Greg and I did some intense, stem tossing stems back and forth. And I just used, and we were learning as we were going. And the one thing I would have to say, if any bass players are listening, is don't use bass on your bass guitar. The biggest lesson we learned from that was, I have all these great Sadowski basses. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Sadowski out of New York.
No, only through you and your Instagram.
Okay.
They look fantastic, though.
They're just amazing. And they're not any more bass heavy than any other basses, but we use Sadowski basses. And what we ended up doing every time, by the time we started layering stuff, we realized that, remember how, the famous story of like Jimmy Page talked about he used Telecasters on Zeppelin, but live he would use Les Pauls?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? It was like there was always too much bass. And then when you have a great sounding kick drum, a great sounding guitar, a great sounding bass, and you put it all together, it's just an explosion of nothing.
Yeah.
Like you have nothing that punches. And everybody makes fun of Brian May's tone like he's playing with a quarter, but yet when you hear that solo for Bohemian Rhapsody, it still sends chills up your spine because it's in that one little frequency pocket that's like just hits your central nervous system. There's like no low end whatsoever. So what I'm saying is what we did with the bass was we just rolled almost everything out, and it seemed to just find this amazing. So then when we put it in the mix, we could when we were mastering and not mastering, but we were mixing, we were able to get more out of the volume. Like when you turned it up, things seemed to sit right by removing bass from everything. I swear, it seems like it might seem academic. I don't know where you guys are, because this was the first time we went all out doing it ourselves. I've done it in big videos before, but when we're, in there turning wrenches, trying to figure stuff out ourselves.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like I was blown away. And that was one of the things, we just kept turning down everything and pulling bass out of everything. And that allowed us to, once everything was there, we could turn everything up, and then you could hear everything, and suddenly everything had a place. Now, that didn't happen with everything. Obviously, Evergreen is Golder is a perfect example of all the gears coming together. That thing just, whatever bass we used, whatever guitar he used, whatever was going on, it just came together. And we struggled with some other songs trying to get it together, but pretty much it was all the same gear. I just used a Universal Audio 6176 compressor preamp. It's like kind of an homage piece to that old Bill Putnam 1176 and the 610 preamp. UA just put like a one piece. It's a 610 preamp on one side and 1176, and that was it. The bass went through that, and actually some of the vocals too. Some of the vocals we did through a Neumann at a big studio in New Jersey, and that had unknown compressors. I don't know. We were just there, kind of sitting around in the booth watching Megan nail everything on the first take.
Right.
And I know everybody's.
Uh-oh, we lose him.
Hey, Kevin, you there?
We lost him.
Come on, Skype. What are you doing?
Damn.
So crazy.
There we go.
And,
Hey, Kevin, we just lost probably about
30 seconds.
30 to 45 seconds of what you just said. It was completely silent.
Oh, what did you lose on?
You said you were watching
stuff on the
every
first take.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you hear that a lot, but like the first take, she did a second take, but when we were comping, 80%, 90% of everything that we used on the record was her first take. No auto tune, no pitch correction, no nudging and cutting.
It was great. Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen anything like it. She's just that good.
And that's especially powerful if you have, engineering experience, which it obviously sounds like you do. I mean, that's so rare.
Actually, we don't. We learned it on the fly. Greg was way ahead of where I was. I just basically bought that I asked the guy that owned that studio if I could only buy one unit for bass guitar, because he had everything. I was like, if I can only buy one, what would it be? And he told me to get the Universal Audio 6176. So I bought that on his thing, and I never knew. I just Googled settings, and I think the bass guitar tone was the Jill Scott vocal tone setting that I stole off of YouTube.
Nice.
Of all weird facts to remember. Right. It just worked. It was crazy.
So when and how did you first meet Greg Howe? No pun intended.
How did I meet him? I know this, but okay. So Greg and I were in a tiny town called Easton, Pennsylvania, that is known only for the Crayola factory. And a couple of Denny's. They have a Denny's and the Crayola factory, and it rains 100% of the year. Only in that town.
Jeez.
It was just such a crazy little small Pennsylvania town. It was like always wet, always rainy, always dark. And there was like 5 clubs in that town. So you can imagine, again, when you're like in a small crew and you got guys that are killing it at their respective instrument, obviously you're going to be like, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah.
I must have been 23. And so, God, that means I've known Greg 27 years. So that was 27 years ago. I met Greg. His brother used to do a lot of jogging. His brother Al is a fantastic frontman, vocalist, creative poet, great artist. And they were in a band in that town called How To. No, actual all puns intended. and it was coming off of the, I believe they were all still wearing spandex. Don't hold me to that. But I'm pretty sure it was spandex. And I remember his brother lived right around the corner from me, and I saw him. He would run like 10 miles a day. And at that time I was like into fitness, and I was running, and then we just started running. I talked to Al on the street, and they were like, yeah, you should come out, check out my band. I went to the club, and these guys were just insane. Obviously seeing Greg the first time was insane. And what's crazy is I actually had his Chops tape. I bought his, one of his early VHS tapes. If you guys are too young to remember what VHS is, it was a black box that we in a bigger black box. And I was like learning his licks. So I already knew some of his licks when I met him. And then we just became friends. And then I actually moved in with him in Easton, Pennsylvania. We lived together in a row home in Easton, Pennsylvania. And that's where we recorded the 5 album. And fun fact, he's the reason I started smoking cigarettes. I made it to 23 without smoking cigarettes. And that record, we were in a room that a Tokyo apartment would consider small. Yeah. And he had a cigarette in the headstock, one in his mouth and one in the ashtray while we were recording that album. And I was like, bro, you're killing me, man. And then I just, if you can't beat him, join him. I was like, all right, just give me one.
Well, that's funny.
That was it. I was a smoker. But
Terrible
then I did
influence.
quit. It was horrible influence. But I did quit after that. And I haven't smoked in years.
Good for you.
That's funny. He's such a positive influence on so many. Not you, though.
Right.
He's not going to tell that story. And you know what? I'm telling that story as a get back for the story that he always tells on me, which is, and he always tells it, and he's like, yo, I just did this interview, and I hope you don't mind. I told you the story when we opened up for Van Halen. Did he tell you that story?
He did not, and now I'm super sad.
Okay.
It's okay. You're one up on him on this show, at least.
Okay. Well, I have to get him back with that story and he knows it too, because we were opening up for Eddie Van Halen. It was a tribute for, this is terrible. My brain is so fried. Who is the guitar player that was Jason Becker?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
When he was struck with Lou Gehrig's disease, the industry was shattered.
Yeah.
And immediately ran to put together a tribute show, and it was going to be in Chicago, and it was like every Marty Friedman, Zach Wilde, Greg, Richie Kotzen, and actually, that was really bizarre because Richie Kotzen's bass player didn't show up, and they didn't want to make him lose his spot. And Richie said, "Can you go on and play that show with me?" And I was like, "Bro, I haven't even heard your album." And I swear to God, I was walking up the ramp 10 minutes before listening to the first song that we're about to play, and they counted off, and I played that set.
Wow.
That is something I forever want to remember again. I still jackknife in bed thinking about the amount of clams were dropped.
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
So brutal.
Tough spot to be in.
Can you imagine? Be like, yo, bro, come out here and just play the show. You've never heard my music. I played 8 songs with Richie Kotzen that I never heard before in my life.
Wow.
Props to you for even doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, that takes courage.
That's not even the story. That's not even the story that Greg tells that is embarrassing. It was kind of cool because, Richie was already on. It wasn't a Chops thing. Richie was already on to his kind of like rocky thing. So it was kind of soundsy, soulful. Yeah. It wasn't crazy. Like it wasn't like it was like, all right, here's a measure of 2, and then you're going to do a bass solo in 5.
Yeah.
Which is where he was just coming from, thank God. But
right.
No, so the story that Greg always tells is, and Van Halen was going to go on last with, I think it was Billy Sheehan on bass, and Steve Lukather was actually the front man of that band,
Wow.
and Pat Torpey was the drummer. And I got to tell you, of all the drummers that were there, Rod Morgenstein, Marty Friedman's drummer, our drummer, Otman Noor, everybody, Pat Torpey stood out as just absolutely, he blew my mind. And it wasn't even Chops. It was just the most, it was the most Bonham-esque. It was like he had 2 tree trunks, and it was like, I had never seen anything like it. How hard he hit and how grooving and deep his groove was. I didn't know anything about Pat Torpey before that. Because I was clueless, but he was amazing as a little side note. So the story, so I have to caveat this by saying I'm clean and sober 14 years and 10 months.
Nice. Congratulations.
I put that out there for any kids. Don't do drugs, kids. It's bad. But so that night I was not clean and sober because it was the early 90s or wherever the hell it was. I forget when it was, but we're in Chicago and I'm out back smoking a joint. Chicago PD rolls into the alley, catches me smoking weed, arrests me, puts me in the back of the truck, and I'm like, you guys can't, because I'm playing with Van Halen in that. They're like, yeah, whatever, get out of here.
Wow.
And I swear to God, this is like a once in a lifetime thing. I'm playing with one of my idols. You got to let me do this. And they were like, I'll tell you what, if you can get us an autograph from Eddie Van Halen, we'll let you go. And so I bring these 2 Chicago PD cops back stage, walking them back. I walk into Eddie's dressing room. It's Steve Lukather, Eddie, Zach Wilde, and Billy Sheehan. And I was like, and I told the story, and suddenly Eddie was my best friend. He was it was so funny how excited he was by that story. And Greg was so excited by that story. He tells it a lot. And the first time he told it, I was a little upset by it. But obviously now I don't care.
That's a great story.
That's a lot of famous guitar players in one story.
It was crazy. And I will share this about Eddie Van Halen is that he is a close talker. So he talked to me 1 inch away from my face in that room.
You think it might be because he's a little deaf, so he likes to stay close?
I don't know, man. I mean, when you get to that level and you've rocked all those bodies and you've toured, I can't project. I can't say that I didn't like it. It didn't. I wasn't uncomfortable. It was Eddie Van Halen. You know what I mean?
Sure,
what are you going to do? He wants to be up in your grill. What are you going to do? You don't do it.
Yeah. You just kind of let that happen.
You let that happen for sure.
So when did you move to Vegas?
Okay, so when flashback to where we were trying to get this album done, and we're throwing stems around. Greg was like, "You know what, guys? If we're really going to get this done, y'all should come out here." And we agreed immediately because he had been set up in Vegas. We were just excited about Vegas. I mean, you guys are the East Coast. You've dug your cars out of the snow. You can imagine if somebody like that offers you to move, how exciting it would be. I've lived in the East Coast for so long and Megan did too, although she came up in she's been all over the world, but she at that time was living in the East Coast, and I'm pretty sure she was sick of rusted out car situation.
The East
Taking your
Coast
car out
life.
you know, and he was like, yeah, just come check it out. We'll get it done. And so we did that. That's when we decided we wanted to take it to the next level because the stuff that we were doing was crazy. We loved it. We were excited. So we all moved out there. I moved out there first and got a place about 3 minutes away from Greg. And that's when shit really took off because we were right in the same hood, and I brought all my studio with me, brought obviously all my gear, and we were able to, get it done. And then Megan came out, and then ironically though, we decided to step it up and fly all of us back to the East Coast to that studio. I'll give a shout out to him. He's my boy. I've known him for a while. It's Thermal Productions in Sicklerville, New Jersey. He's a fantastic engineer, a killer studio. Thermal, THERMAL, and just a kid. He's got all of the things. Hashtag all of the things. He is
Awesome.
And this, I'm going to give another shout out to this guy because this is something you don't hear very often. So people talk about how good engineers are, and the proof is in the albums and such. But there was this one time where how like you go in and you rehearse a song, and then you come out and you all go into the drum booth. You bring like a little amp and somebody's direct or whatever, and you're all sitting in there on crates. And so one time we did that, and we came out of there. And he was like, man, something's wrong. Something's not right. And don't you hear that? The space is weird. And we're like, what are you talking about? It sounds like the same snare drum sound that you got, and none of us heard anything. And he goes in there and he saw that my Mark Bass 12-inch cube was still in the room. I shit you not. The dude could hear that a 12-inch bass amp was sitting in the room.
That's crazy.
It's nuts.
I
don't know to this day if it was real, but I have to give him props because he's just got one of those ears.
So did taking the bass amp out, that made a difference when you guys did go back and
to
replay
him.
it? Yeah, to him.
To him, he was like, "Hear the difference? Do you hear that snare now?" And we're like, "Bro, you're out of your mind." Greg did it.
Yeah,
but yeah, he's great. But yeah, and then we didn't do any recording there. We did all the stems that we had done. We had 80% of the basic stems done. Greg didn't have his final guitars done, obviously, but we had enough for Megan to track the album. She didn't track the whole album. I think we tracked Paradigm Tsunami and Cry on the stuff that I had,
okay,
and what Greg had, which was a Mojave microphone, which is Stephen Royer. I don't really know anything about tech. I'm looking in my closet right now. It's a Mojave, one of the original Mojave mics. It's kind of like the Steve Royer ghetto line of mics.
okay,
Right.
And that 6176. So Cry, Paradigm Tsunami, I think was recorded on that, and the rest was at Neumann in the big studio with all the things.
Okay.
Hashtag.
Okay. Yeah, we were just listening to both those songs, and I mean, fantastic. There wasn't any notable difference to my ear immediately without knowing that.
Now I'm gonna go
not
back
vocally,
and
no.
listen.
Yeah, it's funny that $1,000 Mojave mic really held up against a $3,000 Neumann, and of course the compressor was and preamp was the one he suggested. So I mean, he like 20 different ones at his studio, so
Right.
he knows how compare them up and make them sound good. But it was more some of the sonic stuff that we were wrestling with in Cry, like some of that low end issues we were talking about with, like how in a Lullaby, the bass is playing this real busy line in the chorus that descends, and that was an example of something that if you're playing real busy in the chorus, it's real easy to step on everything. Like
Right,
I was almost playing like a real busy bass line in the chorus, and I remember Greg saying, "No, I want you to keep even more, give me more," and I remember giving him more and thinking he's out of his mind for wanting me to play this much in the chorus. And he was like, "No, bro, trust me." And when we did it, to get that to sit right, that was again when we started to pull out all that low end and start to realize, oh man, this thing is now, it's not stepping on anybody. You can hear the notes happening, but it exists in its own little space. We struggled on some other songs. But here's a fun fact that I remembered. I don't know if so Paradigm Tsunami was actually originally a song called Broken Wings. Have you ever heard that song from the 80s?
Sounds familiar for sure. I
Okay.
can't place it.
So in the 80s there was a band called Mr. Mister.
Okay.
Yeah, I know the name of them.
He had a lot of pop hits in the 80s, and the tune Broken Wings, Paradigm Tsunami was actually our version of Broken Wings, and it was originally meant to be a cover that we were going to throw on the record as like a bonus track that maybe wasn't even listed type thing.
Right.
And then, and so if you sing Broken Wings over Paradigm Tsunami, it works perfectly, which is a little fun.
That's
fact.
hilarious. We're going to try that right after this.
And but we ended up not doing it because we came up with Paradigm Tsunami. We had the idea and we had the time, and we just said, okay, let's just make it an original song because we had more lyrics than. As we said, let's Megan's game. Let's just keep it moving. But there's actually a version of her singing Broken Wings over Paradigm Tsunami somewhere in the universe. I'm not sure it's on my computer or Greg's. I'd have to look, but
That's cool.
So, for young musicians who might feel stuck in their version of Easton, PA, would you suggest they get up and move to a bigger city?
well, it's funny. Every time I'm in a dentist chair and the person's cleaning my teeth and they go, "How do you like Vegas?" I always say the same thing. I brought happiness with me. That's my answer.
Good term.
To that. So wherever you go, there you are. And the real secret thing is not how good you play, how high you sing, how fast you play, because there's always some 12-year-old that's going to play giant steps at 700 beats per minute in Korea. We've all seen it. We've all followed pickup jazz. We've all seen like what's going on out there right now. And there's always somebody that's going to play faster, better, stronger. So the only thing is to develop your own gratitude for life. If you can vibrate at the highest frequency that you can vibrate in, which is not be like all pissed off that your Wi-Fi is not connected on your $900 phone that you just bought, and get yourself in perspective and be grateful for the things you have. It's like we have this sense of like fear of the future and resentment of the past, and it keeps us from living in this present moment. And vibrating with all the power that we can vibrate at. And at the end of the day, moving to Vegas, and I play in a million bands here in Vegas to keep the lights on. There's so many better bass players in Vegas. But the reason guys keep working, especially in this town, is because they don't yell at the sound man. They don't scream at the light man. They don't smash a drink backstage. They're not, it's an internal thing. It's like if they can stop wherever they are and be grateful for what you have, then the universe tends to show up and give you more shit. But if you're like all jammed up about, oh, I'm not here, I'm not like, every time you record a vocal line, well, it's not Stevie Wonder, so it sucks. But instead of comparing yourself to Stevie Wonder, compare yourself to yourself and be like, yo, this vocal line's better than I did last month. This is crazy.
Yeah, good point.
And then, you know what I mean? And then look at Tom Waits. Tom Waits never sang like Stevie Wonder, and that dude's like an American legend.
Right. Yeah, that's all great points there. I love that what you're saying about vibrating at the highest, frequency. That's really smart. Just keep yourself motivated.
Keep yourself motivated and knowing that nothing outside of you, nothing, money, property, prestige, is ever going to change who you are on the inside as a person. And when you look at like all of the stars that have become anything worth their weight in gold, they have that one thing in common is like what other people think of them is none of their business.
Yeah.
But musicians, man, we're such a fragile lot. We're so fragile, man, because we're artists and we attach a sense of self to that thing that we created. And when somebody's like, nah, I'm not feeling that for the bridge, it hurts.
Yeah.
But if we can detach and, and just try to and again, be grateful for what you have. Wherever you are, whatever it is that's going on, you can make a gratitude list. But if you ask somebody to make a gratitude list, whether it's in music or anything, you ask them to make a resentment list, it's the same list. like my shitty car, my shitty bass guitar, my old strings, my stupid studio. The sound card keeps disconnecting. But then if you ask him to make a gratitude list when he's feeling good, it's like, oh man, I got this cool sound card. I got this cool studio. I've got this car that gets me to A to B that I don't have to walk.
Definitely.
It's the same list.
Definitely, I can relate.
The list is your resentment list. It's like, it's what you choose to focus on. But having said that, I will say that there are places in the world that are more conducive to a lighter energy. California, Canada, Las Vegas even has a lighter energy overall.
Yeah.
And I think it's attributable to the heavy amount of sunshine and open space and parking. Like when I leave my house and somebody's like, yo, we're going here at 8:00, in Philadelphia, I'd have to leave at 4:00. And then once I found a parking spot, take a cab from that parking spot to where I was going. It's brutal. And that shit wears you down. In Vegas, you actually get in your car, which is most likely in your garage, and then drive to the place where you're going and park and get out and then go inside.
Makes life so
So
easy.
having said that, there's certain fun things about towns. It rained 5 times, I think, in 4 years since I've been here. There's no mold. There's a ton of vitamin D out west. You got a lot of sun. Yeah, the summers are hot, but you know, just being in the sun and being around that, I think there's no seasonal depressive disorder that musicians can get sitting at home watching 20 seasons of Game of Thrones and eating bonbons in bed. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Definitely.
So it's kind of cool. I mean, I miss Philadelphia. There's a lot of great talent back there. I've got some great friends back there that are still back there, and I miss being there. But you know how it is. It's like all these people that come up from these different places. It's like it's an internal story. It's if you can beat yourself. All we have to do is conquer 1 foot of real estate, which is our brain. It's just what our self-loathing, our inability to step up and become our true selves. And you know, it's tough when you're a musician. You got to go out and do a cover gig, and then you're playing other people's tunes, and then you feel like you've lost yourself. My advice to you is like, be grateful that you're paying the electric bill. And those people that wrote those tunes, you can play it your own way. If you can't sing Don't Stop Believin' in the key that Steve Perry sang it in, I'm telling you right now, Barry White sang Don't Stop Believin', you'd show up and watch it. And there would be 5 notes in the song because it wouldn't anything below a low G.
Yeah.
But you'd be like, damn, that's cool as shit. Why? Because Barry is 100% Barry.
Right. Yep.
And so just become who you are. But, you know, obviously steal from everybody. When I play guitar, I've got like 36 Greg Howe licks that I play because I just literally stole them from him because I've lived next to him for so long and I've watched him and got the opportunity to steal so much from him and learn so much from him. I mean, he not only is one of the most gracious human beings on the planet Earth musically, but he is the best musical teacher you're ever going to meet on the planet Earth. Some people really can't explain some of the heavier concepts, but the way he explains modes is like a 3-year-old could understand it. It's insane. And the way he gets you, he could get you, if you knew nothing about modes, but you could play a couple of Bob Dylan songs, he could get you playing in every mode in one lesson comfortably. It's crazy. Like, he is just that guy. And he just, the way he understands the mind of the struggling student. Like, he's not, as he is, he knows how to explain it. Like, and this is not a plug for his lessons, although if you can afford them, I would take him if I can afford him. He's just an amazing teacher, and he's such a kind spirit, and the way he explains it is so cool. And like, you're like, oh, okay. So, like, for example, if you're in the key of G and you want to play Lydian, he's just like, go up a fifth and play a major scale. And like, wait, what? D major? Yeah, but he's like, land on. He will tell you all that for every single mode, but then he's like, land on one note, land on a C sharp a lot. So if you're in the key of G and you're playing the D major scale while the guitar player's rocking out that G while you're soloing, you land on that C sharp as your one of your main notes, and you hear that Lydian.
Yeah, that sharp
scale
4 effect.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, oh, okay, I know a D major scale. And suddenly I'm playing Lydian, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm a badass.
Right, yeah.
Thanks.
Now you sound like Steve Vai.
Right. Well, Steve Vai actually knows why he's playing, and he's
Absolutely.
he's on another. Jesus Christ.
So how do you stay creative and inspired after all these years of playing music?
That's a good question. Again, it goes back to, I get sad, I get blue, I fear the future and resent the past sometimes, but I've got a good crew that I've surrounded myself with that don't allow me to stay asleep for too long. If they call me up and they're like, and I'm like, wowsy, woo, I just want to stay in and eat pizza. You know what I mean? They remind me, it's who you surround yourself with too. I think Buddha said, look to your left and that's who you are. Our parents said the same thing. If you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas. So if you want to be a good at finance, hang out with somebody that is in the banking industry for a month and go have coffee with them. If you want to play golf, don't hang out with plumbers. Go find somebody that has what you want and watch their YouTube videos, listen to them talk, get inspired. You don't have to, people might say, oh, I can't go near that person. But YouTube is such an amazing talent. When I was young, we had to pick the needle off the record to learn a lick, and we didn't have any slow or fast version. Now it's like, okay, here's giant steps on bass guitar. Here's giant steps on a 6-string bass guitar. Here's giant steps on a Schecter. Here's giant steps played by a girl. Here's giant steps slow in B flat. It's insane, the opportunities that are available, and then you can get around people that are motivational, even online, if you can't stand next to them. But I would say really protect what goes in your ear hole, protect what goes into your eye hole, and of course protect what goes into your mouth. Don't eat McDonald's, because the food, it's mind, body, spirit, right? So we want to take care of your body, get sleep, eat good food, hang out with good people that aren't always whining. When you're around people that whine all the time, you're going to eventually whine because we're imitative creatures. It's what we do. If I'm around people that are judging somebody, I might have a tendency to judge, and I'm like, whoa, what's happening? I like this guy, and I'm judging him. Why? Because I'm hanging out with 5 people at a diner that are judging this guy. So I don't hang out with those 5 people. Just keep it moving and find, do your thing and be inspired. And if you can't be inspired, I've learned from Greg. Greg will play through the times when he's not inspired. Like when he's not inspired, he will just continue to play. And then at some point, a lot of guys give up and they're like, oh, I'm not inspired, I'm just going to put the guitar down. But there's so much other things you can do. He'll just start doing push-ups, the metaphorically push-ups. I'm just going to run this scale, or I'm just going to play over these pre-recorded changes that I have. And then, sometimes inspiration and then sometimes perspiration. You can't have it all the time. It's like 98% perspiration and 2% inspiration. And then when you're lucky enough that 2% inspiration hits, you've got all the perspiration, now you're ready to handle it. It's tough to be grateful. It's a spiritual thing. It's really not a musical thing. You're talking about how is your spirit? How is your mind? How's your crew? What are you thinking about? What are you doing to feed your spirit? Are you feeding it with music? Are you feeding it with people? Are you getting excited about the things that you have? And too often, man, we just want to get the next cell phone because it's 1 inch better than the cell phone that we have now. And we're in a society that moves so fast, and it's if your girlfriend's broke, get a new one. If your cell phone's broke, get a new one. If your band's broke, fuck it, let's just quit. Meanwhile, the Rolling Stones are coming up on 400 years together.
It's been a short,
you know what I mean? It's
yeah, totally. Totally. No, you're totally right about what you're saying. That there's a lot to be said for just staying in the game. Just keep pushing. And then it comes.
Keep your head in the game, and music. If you love music, music has a way of weeding out the people that don't want to do it because it is a hard road. It's a challenging road, but there's been ups and downs. But I will have to say, if you had to ask me right now, in all honesty, every single one of the downtimes was my own doing. I've created them all. And I know that sounds crazy because you might be like, well, what about when, your house flooded out, or what about when, you got whatever. But if I had to be honest and look back, it's my thinking created every single situation that I got myself into. And I know that might be a little deep and hard to understand because it's hard for me to understand sometimes because I go back asleep and I get ungrateful and I'm like, my fucking Wi-Fi is so slow. Oh, sorry. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
you can
you're
edit
good.
out the.
You're good. Not at all. Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
But you know what I mean. I can get back to feeling.
Oh.
Yeah, Kevin, we lost you again.
Oh, no.
Nope, you're back. You're
Hello.
back.
You're back now. Yep. Got us.
My damn Wi-Fi is so slow.
Right as you said that.
That's hilarious that happened.
Right? That's perfect timing. That's kismet. But yeah, I get sad sometimes. But
hey, you gotta get
like
sad to feel happy. It's a comparison. Everything's relative. So I think that you have to go through some downtime, but it's how you deal with it.
That's true. It's how you deal with it, and know that it's not going to last forever.
Right.
And you don't have to you can just ride it out. It's like a storm on a desert island.
Right.
It's going to rain, but it's not going to rain forever. It's going to stop raining. It can't rain all the time.
Unless you're in Easton.
Unless you're in Eastern Pennsylvania, where it rains all the time. Oh, and they also, not only the Crayola factory, but they have Larry Holmes, the Easton assassin, heavyweight champion of the world.
Okay. There you go. So is it true that a lot of those really, really good players came out of Pennsylvania? Paul Gilbert, Greg Howe. I think the list is longer, but those are the two that come to my mind.
That's interesting. I didn't know Paul came out of. I just listened to your other Paul podcast where they were saying Paul's in Portland now. I didn't even know that.
I could be wrong on that Pennsylvania Paul thing. I don't want anyone to quote me on that, but I think I do remember hearing that at some point. So maybe worth checking out. But I also think that a lot of famous guitar players came out of Pennsylvania, and I also think it was around the same time.
Well, certainly Richie and Greg came out at the same time. Greg was a little bit ahead of Richie. Richie was younger, and Richie was more viewed as a prodigy. I remember the first time I saw Richie, man, he's going to kill me for this story. I was in Reading, Pennsylvania at a club called the Silo, which was a massive, it had to be 6 stories straight up in the air, a hollowed out, looked like a barn, where you would just store a bunch of hay, and it had a giant stage, big light show, and a bunch of bands would play there in Reading, Pennsylvania. And he was in a cover band called Arthur's Museum, I believe. I could be wrong. And he was 16 years old, and we were just like, everybody's like, yo, you got to see this child prodigy. And we were like, yeah, whatever. And we went and saw him, and he was shredding. He was doing all the, the neoclassical shredding that was really popular at the time. Like Greg was just starting to add. Greg was way already adding the pentatonic and adding the Mixolydian stuff, which to me made Greg really, really special. Because at a time when everybody was shredding like neoclassical, Greg was putting in pentatonic.
Right.
You had Warren DeMartini from Rat doing that early, because Warren DeMartini was like a mega shredder in the pentatonic, but could also shred that like relative minor, harmonic minor type crazy stuff. Greg did that so early, and his Mixolydian especially was so like he had so much cool like tastiness to that at a time when nobody was really ripping in the pentatonic scale like that. And Richie was right behind him at 16, and I remember we saw Richie, and the night that I saw him, it was his mom's birthday, and he was actually dedicated a song to sing to his mother. And if I'm not mistaken, now this is going way back, it was a song called Jacob's Ladder. This is such a weird fact. I'm Googling right now, too, because oh, no, wait.
And
Huey Lewis.
Oh, yeah, Huey Lewis in the News.
I want to say a Huey Lewis in the News song. And this is the craziest thing about Richie. So Richie, at 16, singing this Huey Lewis in the News song, cracking on every note, sounding like Peter Brady. That is an old-ass reference. Do not judge me right now. Like when a preteen is like their voice is changing.
Right.
Totally.
And they're all like, yeah.
Yeah.
That was Richie, right? And then suddenly, like a week later, he was like what he is today. Like, it was nuts. Who's the guy? Glenn Hughes.
One of my actually probably my number one favorite singer.
Okay, we all know Richie is. If anybody had to do a Glenn Hughes tribute, I think if Richie doesn't get the first,
he'd be the only one that could.
Richie first, you're messing up. Well, fun fact is, Glenn Hughes actually is friends with Richie and taught Richie. Oh. I don't know if anybody knows.
That's crazy.
I did not know
that.
So
studied under Glenn, but what was crazy about him is he went from Peter Brady to Glenn Hughes in like a month. We were like, yeah, this guy's amazing. Can't sing for shit. And then we came back and see him, and he said, it's like he woke up one day and he's Glenn Hughes, and we were like, God, like, he's just one of those guys, like that. Just
it must be some sort of prodigy blood or something. It's like unexplainable almost.
Well, he went to the crossroads and summoned the devil and sold his soul.
If anyone did, Richie did. That's for sure.
That's what happened. But yeah, that's my own. I have other Richie Kotzen stories, but because Richie, we all came up in the same time, and we would go over to Richie's house and record. He had a studio on a farm in the Lehigh Valley. We were also in a band called the Sharks in the Lehigh Valley, which had a deal on Elektra Records back in. Now we weren't in the video. Me and my guitar player. We replaced the guitar player and the bass player that were in the video in the 80s, but they came out of Ephrata, and they had a song that was number 2 on the MTV Countdown at the same time that Home Sweet Home from Motley Crue was number 1, so to let you know how old I am. But that was another band that came out of Lehigh Valley, but I can't really think of any other like mega shredders, but I'm probably just having a brain fart right now.
We did just confirm that Paul Gilbert was born in Illinois, but basically raised in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Wow.
So, and I don't know the timing of that, but there you go. So that is confirmed. What are your thoughts on music school? Do you think that's something more people should do? Do you think that's necessary? What do you think?
I don't know. I can only share my experience, strength, and hope, and that I never went to school for music. I just sucked up what was around me. I know a lot of people and have played with a lot of people who have went to school, and I love and respect their playing greatly. So I don't have one way to say or the other. I just know that you don't have to, because I didn't. Greg didn't. Greg, the first time he heard Eruption, he didn't have anybody to teach him because there was no videos. We didn't see it. He thought it was finger picking. He learned Eruption in a finger picking style.
Yeah, that one he did tell us.
Yeah, we did talk about that one.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah, and that's one of those things that lead to being a better player. You learn how to do something.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah. The best lesson there is one that Greg taught me a long time ago, and that was you kind of become you through your limitations more so than your strengths.
That is so true. Do you remember in The Matrix when Keanu was going to visit the Oracle and the Asian guy that was defending the Oracle fought him first?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he said, "I'm sorry, you can never truly know a person until you fight them."
Right.
So it's like, it's the stumbling blocks that define us. It's the adversity. That's who you are. If your bank is full and the lights are on and the refrigerator's full, you're not really. It's not until you hit adversity that you start really, and that's when you get to practice patience and tolerance. That's when you get to practice gratitude. That's when you get to practice, like, I'm going to get through it. And then when life throws storms at you, and this goes back to talking to the younger musicians, when a storm hits, and you survive that storm, and you come out and you're like, oh, okay, it didn't kill me like I thought it was. And then you're ready for the next storm. So, yeah, go get wet, man. Jump into the mud and don't be afraid. And if you love it, it doesn't matter because you're not going to be doing it for money. Obviously, nobody gets into this game for money.
Nah, yeah.
And if you love it, you might be able to keep the lights on. And, everybody's version of success is different. Like, I live alone. To me, that's huge. In 2018, to not have roommates, to me, that's success. I'm successful. I've made it.
Hell yeah.
That's it. So if you lower the bar and you'd be like, okay, I got a couple of frozen pizzas, I've got an Xbox, it's all good. And if all those things disappear, I'm still going to be good. My friend in Philly, who is an amazing artist, he's a amazing songwriter, amazing artist. He His name's Cookie Rabinowitz. I know that's a crazy name.
That's the best name I've ever heard.
He's just so awesome. He's just a talented guy. He's a jack of all trades, multi-purpose, Swiss Army knife. He's a tech genius, and he's just a singer-songwriter out of Philly. He recently lost his entire house, burned to the ground. Wow. And I remember we showed up for him, and we were like, bro, and what blew my mind was he went right to gratitude. Like, can you imagine when something like that happens and you're a musician and all your gear's gone? I mean, he even had one of my basses that we kept in the family. It was an old Fender P bass that we had for years, that I've had since the early 90s. That burned to the ground and all that. But he went right to being grateful. He didn't miss one day. And, you know, I wouldn't have been mad at him if he was been like, oh, man, like, what am I going to do? Like, you know, but he went right to developing gratitude, even in the face of that kind of adversity. And guess what? Everything came back. Yeah. He got a studio back. He got everything worked out. It all worked out. And he snapped back so fast because his brain came back first.
Yeah.
And that was such a great experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't think many people could say the same.
Yeah, that's the hardest
Well, it's
time.
tough, man. I don't know that I could have done that, but he inspired me. And now if it does happen to me, I'm going to look at that and remember, because I'm going to call him because he's my boy, and he's going to be like, hey, you know, never in your, like, when you look back on your life and you go, when have your worst fears ever come true? And the answer is always never. It's always never. So just go out and take a stab. What was that quote? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, our fears are what are the only thing that's holding us back in life, is our self-doubt and our fear and our comparison to other people. But everybody's got their voice. Everybody's got their thing. Everybody's got their take and their color. And there's a place in the sun for everybody. I know the sun seems like it's starting to get crowded now in 2018 with 700,000 musicians out there. But yeah, there's a place in the sun. There's always a place. If I had to sum it all up in one sentence, I would say this is what's from the heart is going to touch the heart. If you sit down and your goal is to make money, you're never going to inspire anybody. But if you sit down and you're just in the moment and you're filtering out all the stuff you've ever heard into your little $200 recording device, it doesn't matter what the device is. It doesn't matter what the gear is. What's from the heart is going to touch the heart.
Wise words. Very, very nice.
Yeah, I love all the kind of spiritual stuff we're getting into. I don't think we've gotten into that with other guests.
It's important. It's very important.
That's awesome.
It really is, man, because that's all the gear in the world isn't going to fix your dead spirit. Yeah. In the Blues Brothers, the first movie, he's like, I don't know, Ray, this keyboard, I don't know about the action on this keyboard. It's a little beat. Ray Charles came around and said, there ain't nothing wrong with the action on that keyboard. And he sat down. I mean, you give Ray Charles a Casio out of Walmart,
he's gonna make it work.
He's gonna murder.
Yep.
He's gonna make it.
Yep.
It's all because of the spirit.
Love it.
Kind of getting back to the specifics, I guess I'll say. What are some tips you would have for young bassists about locking in with drummers?
Yeah.
Maybe bassists that kind of aren't the best at that. What would you say
is pocket playing?
What would you say to them?
That's a great thing, and it's very, very important. And, the very first thing I would say is if you want to work and you want to play in time, don't worry about playing, obviously play to a click, obviously play to a drummer that's playing to a click, unless you're with a pro drummer that can play off the click and his meter's good. If you're with a drummer that's meter is solid, and he's not playing to tracks, which many drummers have to these days. The tracks are just a part of the landscape on tour and locally. If you're, in a regular local gig, so you're used to playing on the grid. I know a lot of guys will say don't play on the grid, but practicing on the grid, practicing off the grid are always, you'll notice the difference in your playing, no matter what. And the biggest thing is just don't overplay. What's amazing is I'm just so blown away at how much overplaying is happening in the world today. And it's funny, a manager once we had I forget. Oh, David Sustek out of Easton, Pennsylvania, was managing a band called Live that had a big album called Throwing Copper in the 90s.
Sure. Yep.
And Greg was and that dude was managing us, and he gave us some of the greatest advice in the world. And he was like, listen, on this topic, he was like, listen, Kevin, you've been playing for X amount of years. If you can't figure it out, what makes you think they're going to figure it out? So keep it simpler than you would even think is simple. So, and so, less is more in the beginning. Play very little. If the part is too complex, dumb it down to just get whatever you can get it through at a slower tempo. The biggest thing is the slowest tempo. And you know how there's always like a lick where there's one part where you have to use your ring finger in a weird way, and suddenly you always slow down there. Just take that part and loop it and just loop it at a slow speed until you can get it up to speed with the rest of the stuff. Yeah. Slow everything down. Everybody wants to just go 150 beats per minute and play all this crazy fills and stuff. But if you're struggling. And the other thing is, if you're using your fingers as a bass player, accent on the snare drum. Try to listen to the snare drum. You have to start expanding your ear, because a lot of guys, you can tell, just barely able to put their ear on what they're doing. But if you can't, if you're in that space, I get it. But just try to extend your ear ever so slightly. Just kind of like the force field around the Enterprise when it wants to engulf another ship. They just want to put an extra force field out. Just extend that force field over to the drums and just hear the snare drum. And then just accent with the snare drum on one of your fingers and focus on that.
Good advice. Yeah.
That's you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a great tip.
And I love the reference, except it was Star Trek instead of Star Wars, so that makes me sad. But
huge Star Wars.
Oh, it makes you.
Yeah, I'm currently sitting in my studio with every single Star Wars movie poster up on the wall.
I'm not going to hold that against you, but. But you have to understand, though, the reason it's Star Trek over Star Wars is when you get to be my age, Star Trek had already set in my brain 10 years before Star Wars. I mean, Star Trek, 10 years before Star Wars even hit.
Right.
Sure.
So to me, Star Wars is the new one for kids.
Right. Yeah, and I was born in '92, so it was made for me. At the turn of the millennium.
It wasn't even made for you, really.
It was made specifically for me only.
George Lucas had you in mind.
I've got resentments older than you.
There you go. You should maybe let go of those. We're talking about so much positivity.
Yeah, but now I have resentment. And now I'm worried about how old I am. No, it's all good. Music just gets better with age.
Absolutely.
Like fine wine.
The same. So to kind of wrap up here, Kevin, I got a couple more quicker questions for you.
Sure.
What's your favorite new music, like let's say of the last 2 years or even 1 year?
Wow, that's gonna stump me.
We find that to be true with a lot of the guests. That's why I love this question. It's deceptively easy.
Yeah, I know it's deceptively easy. It's funny. I have the worst, weirdest. I have no music in my house. I have no CDs. I have like 13 MP3s that I've purchased. I think here, I'll access them and tell you what they are. Maybe that'll help. So let me see what we got here. It's not even new. I mean, so let me see the newest thing that I've gotten. Oh my God, this is embarrassing. That's not new. Jesus, Patsy Cline, Prince's Greatest Hits. Oh, Jamie Liddell would be the newest thing. Do you know Jamie Liddell?
I do not. Not by the name, at least.
Familiar.
Okay, so Jamie Liddell, I just purchased his new album.
I'll write it down.
Melody Gardot, an album called The Absence, which, all over the shop. I don't know how old that is or how new that is. I could be embarrassing myself. And I just purchased Everybody's Talking, Tedeschi Trucks Band. Which,
love them.
God bless America. That boy has no business being that.
He is.
I went and saw it.
He's just mesmerizing is the best word I can.
It really is. It really is. It's mesmerizing. And here's another thing. It's funny that you bring this up. I got a sidetrack for 2 seconds.
No, sure.
Goosebumps is what you got to follow. Like people are like, if you're whatever profession you're in, if you're not getting goosebumps, you're in the wrong profession. And nobody knows what goosebumps are, right? But goosebumps are, whether you believe in a higher power, one of the 400 gods that are out there to choose from, whatever it is, if you're getting goosebumps, you're in a place where you're not quite here. It's like another realm. It's like almost like a divining rod pointing you to the right thing. And when I sat in front of Derek Trucks, every single hair on my body stood up. Wow. And I just couldn't explain it. And so that feeling, and the same thing with B.B. King. In Easton, B.B. King came through in Easton, Pennsylvania, and played at a tiny theater called the State Theater, and we went down and checked him out. And I was like, and I've seen so many great players. I mean, the very first Marigold gig that we played at, every single great bass player was there. Hadrian Farrard, Alan Caron, Billy Sheehan, the dude who played with Peter Gabriel. Who's the dude from the greatest slap bass player in the world, Victor Wooten. All of those bass players were at the first Marigold show. Let's just take a moment for how panicked and not in the moment I was on that first show. I can tell you that I wasn't even there. That was the most horrible performance. I did not show up for that. That's who was in the audience. Every one of those bass players.
Jeez.
And it was at the NAMM show, and Greg thought it was a good idea. And I'm sorry I'm sidetracking, and I'm kind of dancing all over the place.
No,
but you just reminded me of that. And that's a great story, because the lesson there is that Greg was like, dude, you're not going to play, because I was panicking. I'm like, bro, I can't play. I can't even go on stage. And he's like, dude, you're not going to impress these guys with the licks that you play from this record. You're going to impress these guys with how much fun you have on that stage right now. And that was the greatest advice I ever got in my life. Because if you think about it, that is so accurate. Yeah. Like, these are Hadrian Farrard, Billy Sheehan, Alan Caron.
Yeah. Probably not going to be impressed with chops.
Not going to do it.
They're looking for the X factor.
Exactly correct.
Yep.
So as much as I love Victor Wooten, and as much as I've sat for hours trying to figure out those licks, I've never gotten goosebumps like I got from Derek Trucks.
Yeah, one of my absolute favorite videos on the internet is a video. I don't know the actual situation or event or concert or whatever it was, but it was B.B. King, which is funny. You brought up B.B. King, and as I was writing it down to make a note, you said the word as I was writing it, and it just totally tripped me out, but that's a side note. So it's Derek Trucks, it's B.B. King, and John Mayer's there too, and I think his wife is there as well, Susan Tedeschi.
I've seen that 100.
Yes, it's fantastic, because B.B. King lets him take a solo, and it's just mind-blowing. It's nothing chopsy or anything like that. It's just insanely good. And B.B. King says that's about the best I've ever heard it.
Very cool.
Oh, I love that. That is so awesome.
So good. I watch that video all the time.
Well, I need to check that one out.
I need to link that in the show notes for the listeners.
And that's the thing, music today is like, I love a lot of it, but if you're not getting goosebumps, you have to ask yourself, like, really, because when you do listen and you get that chill, like, it hits you, whatever it may be. Like, I know guys that get chills at EDM, and that's cool. Wherever your goosebumps are, follow those, because that's where you're supposed to be. And that's what you want to hang out with that. You just let your goosebumps be your divining rod. A divining rod was back in the old Western days. They used to hold a stick that looked like a Y, and it was supposed to show them where water was. It vibrated. Of course it did. There was no science behind it. But goosebumps are your modern day divining rod. Just follow them, and you'll never be let down.
Solid advice.
Yeah.
So what about favorite music that people might be surprised to learn that you love?
Bjork's first album.
Awesome.
No hesitation there. Right. I like that.
The album's called Debut. Well, because I'm staring at the poster that's overlooking my computer studio right now.
Oh, okay,
nice.
Cool.
Bjork has traveled with me through 3 properties now. She is the only thing in my studio. Bjork, that first album lit my spine up so many times with her voice in the same way that Derek Trucks' guitar did. Those notes just tortured me. It was just, and all of her life, man, she has been so fearless. If she does not care what other people think more than anybody on the planet Earth. You could say that about a lot of major artists, like Lady Gaga showing up in a meat suit, but Bjork is like, she's had this one quote, and she said, if you play it really, really safe in life, you won't get any treats. And it was such a, combined with her insane ability, her fearless, just going anywhere into a direction that just makes, like, she's just, you know what I mean? I can't.
Totally.
That album, that first album is, my desert island, one of my desert islands.
That's awesome. All right, Kevin, so I think we're about near the end of the interview. I'm going to delete this next little part. But what I want to do now is punch back in, say a formal goodbye, and then if you're cool to hang around for an extra, minute or two, that'd be cool.
Sure.
Sweet.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for being on the Musicians Talk Show. Really appreciate it. I love this.
Yes.
This was awesome. I mean, so
awesome.
much talk about spirituality and positivity and all the intangibles that we love to talk about on this show.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, where can our listeners and fans find you so they can keep up with you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Friendster. No, I'm just kidding. Check out my MySpace.
Yeah.
You guys still use MySpace?
Oh, yeah. No,
Definitely.
Check it every day.
www.kevinvecchione.myspace.com. No, I have a webpage, kevinvecchione.com. I haven't updated it since 1973.
Okay, so right around the time the web was invented.
Right around the time the internet was invented, yep. And the Pentagon was very upset about it because they were using it for military means.
Right.
Facebook, Instagram. You drop my name into Google, and you'll see a bunch of stuff. I think I'm Googleable.
Yeah,
you are.
Is that a word?
We did that earlier.
It is a word and it is true.
Yeah.
It's definitely a
Give
word
a follow,
in 2018
give a
at
like.
least. Absolutely, definitely. Highly encourage it. Well, thanks again, Kevin, and we got to get you back on this show soon, man. This was awesome.
Thanks, you guys. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Hey, guys. First of all, thank you so much for listening. If you could please take a quick moment to subscribe on iTunes and leave a rating and review. Your feedback seriously is really important, and it helps us keep the show alive.
Check out musicianstalkshow.com to sign up for our mailing list. If you do, we're going to send you our main theme song and a few other surprises. Plus, you'll always be the first to know what episodes are coming up.
If you want to help support the show so we can keep putting out the highest quality content possible, please follow the Support the Show link at our website and consider donating to our Patreon page.
Lastly, if you have an idea for a guest or a question you want to discuss, contact us through any of the contact forms on our website, and we'll do everything we can to make it happen.
Whew, all right. That was a lot, but we got through it. Thanks again, guys, and we will see you soon.